Hello and welcome back to module number 9. I'm going again to revise my syllabus a little bit more, and in this module I'm going to talk about developing tools. And again, the issue that I am really concerned, I'm trying to work with you, so your project will not be just lines of code, but it will provide you the ability to create a package or a schema or something that you'll be able to present if you are going for a job interview that asks you to have a proficient knowledge of Python. So the issue that I'm trying to incorporate, and based on some of you recommended, they want to see more application or more library that will be able you to get better benefit of the Python. Right now we cover quite a lot, and I'm quite satisfied with the result of your knowledge that you already showed. So what did I found? I found online a Python sheet that will summarize basically what we have covered so far, and by doing that you will have the ability to understand the string format, the file, the array, the class, the system, the string, the time, and the data format, as we cover that in class in the previous module. So this is basically a summary that gives you a more clear vision of what we have covered and what it is. I like to point out to the Python community that shared with that, and I highly again recommend you to participate in those online communities, because this is a source that usually give you additional information that might help you. Okay, back to our class and back to what we are aiming to do. So let's start with the first thing that we are going to talk about. It is called virtual INV. Then we will see on documentation, and then logging, and the last part is the unit testing. All of it's part of what is required us as an open source community to provide in order for us, for other people that will share our application, that will be able to do that. Yes, those type of environment also exist in not open source application, but in open source application this is becoming a central part of the creation of the schema or the library, and this is really important. I know I am an R fanatic, and so in the R fanatic, when you submit your package to the R community, usually there is a live person that goes over and not only check the code but also check the documentation that you provide. So it's really, again, this is really good when you are going to apply for a job. You're not going to be hired as the highest level project manager of the development. You probably will start with as a programmer, and as a document you will need to produce document showing what you have done. So this is really good, this is really important, so you will understand that this is part of the process that we are applying in order for us to get recognized, to order for us to document the work that we did in order for us to succeed. So let's start with the first idea of not a package, a library that calls virtual an env, and it is creating isolation for the Python environment. In the upcoming class, I'm going to talk to you about Python as a server or web server, and be able to accommodate that in order for you to produce your application or your schema or your library in order for it to work with the Python. And so again, additional environment that you can embed it into your Python code in order for you to do that. I will start first of all of how we are going to twist and trying to accommodate in order for you to be able to install that. And it is a little bit funny. It's a little bit different from what you are accustomed to see when you install the Python for the first time. So you should install it, solve the problem of creating customized Python environment for each project. And so the Python itself, the application or the library itself, you need to open up a pip, which is a command line, and basically Linux or Unix or in your machine, I don't know what it is, and you need to install that. That will install, in example, in Unix machine. And the idea here is that you need to create a folder that's called my project folder, and inside of it you're going to create the folder for the virtual env. So essentially you are creating a copy of the Python interpreter as a copy of the setup tools library, so it will be linked or be embedded into the folder called INV, VNIV. That's a name that I came up, or the standard that we are all using. So basically this is how it will set up itself and be able to see that. After creating the virtual environment, the next setup is to activate it. And again, the activation and be able to do that, and you're able to install inside this environment additional global site packages or anything that you think that needs to be activated. So to deactivate is the deactivation code in order for you to do that, but you do not do that from the Python environment, but you do it from a little bit higher level in order for you to deactivate the ability. So for distributing your project and ability to set it, you will be you're going to create a freeze requirement test that will create the ability to share this environment. So this can be used to rebuild the environment later. It is usually allowed another developer to run your project without to figure out what packages or which version are being used. And this is really important. Again, in the work environment, this is part of how you're going to work in that settings. So putting all together, the typical use of virtual environment is follow. You need to log in, you need to show activation, and you need to again install the requirements text, and in the end deactivate in order for you to continue working on your Python environment. So you are encouraged to use virtual environment in your project, in your funnel, if you're up into the task. I will not ask you, it is not mandatory, but it is, again, it's courage house of all your code in a repository. So one of the things that we are I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to do that, is that repository that force you to work with a repository. I know this is a new requirement. No other class that you have been attended require you to do that. I, for instance, started with a GitHub, but Python has its own repository, and virtual INV can be a repository. So you decide how you want to do that, and you can share your virtual INV as your final project with me, so I'll be able to see what you have done. It is really important. One of the things that we will see in the end of this module is the ability of testing, And one of the things that is really important is the testing needs to be in different environments. So one of the companies that I used to work that used to use Python as the background used to have this virtual INV in order for them to test your code, because you submitted your code to your project manager. He or she usually review it and then write you a code. You did not do things right, or you did excellent. So this is part of the exchange that you will encounter in any environment with regard to developing application or developing a platform. Another very famous library is the logging library, which is essential practice for non-trivial application, in which events are recorded for potential diagnostic use in the future. Again, the logic can be recorded in the following kinds of items: errors, example, your codes carry out errors. Any expectation that can be raised can be logged, and when it caught. Again, this is when you're working with the environment that is usually very keen to it. And again, depending on your boss, I had a boss that was very keen on that, and so he was usually very document every error that you made, so you will not redo those errors again. So significant events, for example, when administrator logs into the system, and data. One of the things that we often encounter, and especially with large data, when we do not have 3 or 4 variables, but we have more than 20 or 40 variables, that's something that can cause problems, and we need to have logging in order for us to do that. So logging can be useful information about the state of the program during a crash, or help the developer understand what is your program is exhibit some kind of behavior. The Python standard library actually come up with a standard logging module. So it is particularly good decision to use this module because it includes messages, generate any other packages that use this library. As usual, again, you can use the logging module as using importing logging in statement, and here is a simple example of logging calls. So import logging, I am going to define what is logging critical, and I'm going to say what it is factual error, I want to declare that, and ability to apply and ability to detect all of it. In the logging library that usually stands for the library, we have level. We have debugging for development, info for messages confirm expect behavior, warning about future issue or beginning of unexpected behavior, error result in not only your programming statement but also in the data itself, and sometimes in unexpected. And critical is something that unexpected happened and the software is not running anymore as a result. So you see level of appreciation of the logging with that regard. And I gave you an example, and this is example of the idea of it and how to apply to it. After logging long test, you have long files called example log, which also have the ability to do it and ability to apply what it is. So again, I gave you a code that you can run and implement, and again, it's a good practice. If you are going, or are you planning to go to work in a Python environment, it is really important that you have these skills and you have the ability to do that, and the code will give you some essence of how it works and how it apply. And again, one of the logging basic configuration is the simplest way to basically a global configuration for the logging system. So any calls for information or debugging, we will call for basic configuration, and it's not been called already, and it will give you the argument of the file mode, the format string, the level, and the stream, and all of that is part of the things that you will evaluate what you have done. So again, I am importing logging, I'm importing my math, and again, this is the level that I can apply. And as you can see, in the end, I use the if condition just to maintain and to understand what it is embedded. So note that the logging in this slide, note that the logging of the variable data is here and how I apply it in order for you to apply that. Again, example of debugging, example, don't panic. Part of anyone who writes code is to have errors and bugs and everything else and a lot of headaches, and for my case, losing hair. So those are the result of, again, logging and ability to apply to it. And again, I want you to have a confidence that this is typically how I'm going to examine your final project, and I'm going to run the logging, and I'm going to run another useful test that I'm going to talk about next. But this is part of my routine as a programmer, and I want you to have a sense of what it is, and in order for you to do that. I also, again, I posted with the link inside that, sorry, whoops, I jumped too high. With regard to the modules, and again, log records, I can record all the logs in it, I can apply to it in order for me to apply the logging, in order for me to store and recover or to examine if it is true. Okay, so we talked about logging to create a system. We talked about environment that you're going to create in order for you to test and not to be able to isolate yourself with that. And I want to talk about your code. And there are obvious reasons how to test your code. And one of the reasons to do that, and I will show you, I will give you the example of it. This is online code. You're going to copy your code, test the code, and it will test if your code has a bug. So this is part of our discussion, and one of the things that I want to talk about is automated testing, manual testing, and ability to see how can we improve and how to improve, overcome the ability of testing. So this is the idea of the testing. The most common type of testing is automated versus manual, and there's good and bad on those two terms, but I know that most of you are not programming professionals, and so what we are usually in that stage, what we usually do is to do annual testing. And yes, it is good feature to do because you have the ability, a sense of an identity, what you think that might be a problem, but you need to change the code, your code. You have to go through each single item of the list and double check it. And one of the things that usually is very important in annual manual testing is that the unit test is a similar test, so you will not change every time. Because Python is usually incorporate data, it is usually the unit testing or the definition of unit testing is something that you need to isolate what is broken in your application and fix it faster, so you will have to do that. When you are looking at the final project, one of the things that I will ask you to, I'll probably ask you to think about, what is your unit of test? What are you aiming to do? What type of test are you going to apply? And so there are two types of tests. Integration test, that your application with other, is the components of your application cooperate with other, and the unit test, that a small component of your application. So those are the two types of tests that usually the unit of test is defined. And so I want you to think about, when you are thinking about your final project, this is something that you will do. For example, check the sum. And one of the numbers is 1, 2, 3, and it has to be equal to 6. So we're going to say assert sum, and we're going to have a container of 1, 2, 3, and we are assuming that it will be 6. Should be 6. Okay, so now this will output everything on the REPL because the values are correct. So what we are going to do, we are going to do assertion error, and should be, and try the assessment again with the wrong value, and it will say, okay, that should be traced back and the file and the line, and it will give you the assertion error. And so this is how we test to see where's the error in our code or in our data, because in this case it does not match 6. Instead of testing on the code of REPL, you should also put a new Python file called testsum and execute it again. So define the testsum, assert the sum, the data unit, and if name and test and print, and so everything will pass if it is correct and if it is good. But one of the things that you will also encode, and your final project is not only copy my code and post it as your assignment, I want you to experiment. And one of the things that I highlight again and again, I want you to put everything in GitHub so I'll be able to look inside, because right now this is the platform for us to see or share this idea. So GitHub is so useful in that context. So let's start with following manual of two functions, and I will call it even.py, and I will say the following. I will call the even, I will go to post uneven, and I will say if it's true or return false in that case, and it will return false. So now the issue of testing. And this is, again, I did not say that. Testing takes time. Self-testing takes more time. So I recommend, and when you do your self-testing code, take a break, drink some water, and just understand that you will find a lot of mistakes. And even everyone find mistakes in their code. So this is something that you need to give extra time for yourself in order for you to evaluate. So you can store the data of the testing result inside the module and run them anytime you want them, but this requirement is usually manually checked for the correction, and so this is something that is really important. And even though, so the issue is that let's use assertion statement to our advantage, and we will test only when we only need to see if there is an assertion error expected to rise. No output means all tests passed in this case. So again, I gave you the code, I gave you the example. This is a better way for us to do that. Untested is a module in the standard library that you can pull out from the standard library, which is specifically tested for a small piece of code in isolation from the rest of the code database. So the idea is it's test-driven development in advantage of the following reason: encourage modular design, easier to cover every code path, and actual process of testing less time consuming. So in this case, this is an example of the simple use of untested. And again, import, I will say import even, and I will test the case, I will evaluate that, and I will run it, and he will say to me, run one test in 0.00 seconds and everything is okay. Yay! I don't have an error in my code. So all tests are defined in methods, and all custom class are delivered from the untested test case. And so behind the scene, this is what is going on. So you are calling the untest main, which runs the module, which also give us the control over the module. It will also create a new instance of the event test for every test method we have. So we can perform in isolation, and isolation is really important. And then again, try, expect, else in order for you to do that. And again, the test and everything else with that in order for us to do that. So I gave you all the layout. I gave you also the PowerPoint so you can go over all of it and see what it is and how to do that. You can also, one of the things that I highly recommend is to use the my PowerPoint does not connect to it. I will clean it up. I will try to post it later on. Is also to there is a talk about the testing, the unit testing by Nate Batchelor, and he's a good talker, and he makes points about why is it so important to test our code. Yes, there is the professor that we can throw all the codes to him and he will figure out what's wrong with our code. But sometimes it is useful for you to spend more time on your code to make sure that everything is correct. And it is like an assignment in your English class. You want to make sure that your sentences are correct, your grammar is correct. The same goes to Python code, same goes to your project. I want to make sure that you are self-aware that the code that you write are correct and make sense. Last issue, as I said before, is documentation. And again, I do apologize. One of the things that we establish in the open source community compared to any other community is that we need to provide documentation. And for those who in information science, this is supposed to be your strong side. So documentation is the ability to document inside your code what you have done, make sure that it is well spent, be able to lay out exactly what you have done, and to document how you develop your library or module and give the other person who is not familiar with you more essence of the project that you did. So it's basically what we have done in this class. I ask you to have a blog and a code. So basically the code is what you're going to create, but the blog entry is basically your documentation, what you have done, what you are succeeding in doing, and how to apply to it. So there is a lot of tools to can be applied to it. One of them is Syntax, which is a tool that very popular in the Python community, and it is usually generate an official Python document which is well kept and it is dry. So I highly recommend that you do that. Again, the way for you to get it is, again, you're not going to install it in Python environment. You're going to go up a level in order for you to install that. It is this document converted to HTML, PDF, or main page, and so you will not be able to share it. It is not just Python. It is also accommodate in C and C++ that support more language on the way for us to do that. So the features that it has the ability to output, as I said before, extensive cross-references, some hierarchy structure to it, easy to define the documents tree with automatic links to the siblings, the parents, and the children, automatic indicators and extensions, and contribute extension again to what it is. So those are the things that is really important, and it's a quick start and apply to it, and it's usually welcome. You will get the idea what it is and how to apply to it. And I will also give you a link in the module to it and how to apply it, all of it. I will not ask you to do that for this assignment, but for the final project, I would like to see some documentation. So I would highly recommend to use this type of application and learn about that. I will also give you a video that also talks about this application or the library of documentation and how to apply that, so you will have better sense what it is entail and how to do that. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoy that. I hope it was not overwhelming. I know this is a really dangerous zone. I hope that you all take care of yourself with regard to the virus, and you're not you're washing your hands and trying to keep safe. And I only like to know that if something happens or you feel need to talk, I am available. I'm not from the field of medicine, but let me know if something you feel everything is okay. Just know that everything is okay. That's all I have to say. I hope you're okay. I hope you're good. I hope you enjoy the class. Until next time, have fun. Bye. Whew.